Go, what if one night could completely redefine the meaning of a concert, not because of dazzling stage effects alone, but because thousands of people walked away believing they had witnessed history? Long before the first spotlight pierced the evening sky above Madrid, something unusual was already happening. The streets surrounding the venue were alive long before sunrise. Cafes filled earlier than usual, metro stations echoed with excited conversations in dozens of different languages, and purple outfits seemed to appear everywhere. Travelers carrying banners, handmade gifts, cameras, and light sticks smiled at strangers who somehow felt like lifelong friends. Nobody needed an introduction. One glance at a familiar logo or a piece of purple clothing was enough to spark a conversation. "How long have you waited for this?" a young woman asked another fan while they stood in line for merchandise. "Years," the other answered with a laugh. "Honestly, it feels like forever." Their conversation was interrupted by cheers erupting from somewhere farther down the line. Nobody knew exactly what had happened, but excitement spread faster than facts. That was the atmosphere surrounding SUGA's long-awaited first performance in Madrid. Every rumor, every movement, every sound was enough to make thousands of hearts race. For many fans, this was never simply another concert. It was the fulfillment of countless promises they had silently made to themselves during difficult years. Some had saved money for months. Others had traveled across continents. Families reunited after years apart. Friends who first met online finally embraced in person. Madrid was no longer just a city. For one unforgettable weekend, it had become the meeting place of dreams. As afternoon sunlight bathed the historic streets in golden colors, restaurants near the venue welcomed visitors from Korea, Japan, Indonesia, Brazil, Mexico, France, Germany, the United States, and countless other countries. Languages blended together into a beautiful rhythm that somehow everyone understood. Music. Hope. Anticipation. Those emotions required no translation. Near the entrance, a middle-aged father carefully adjusted the strap on his daughter's purple light stick. "Nervous?" he asked. She nodded enthusiastically. "I've never seen him before." The father smiled. "I haven't either." "Then why did you come?" He looked at her for a moment before answering. "Because every time I saw you watching BTS videos at home, you smiled even on your hardest days. I wanted to understand why." The young girl hugged him tightly. Neither realized they were about to discover the answer together. As sunset slowly approached, giant screens around the venue displayed reminders for concertgoers. Every announcement was greeted with applause as if the show had already begun. Inside, technicians moved quickly behind the scenes. Lighting engineers checked every spotlight. Sound engineers adjusted the smallest audio details. Camera operators rehearsed every angle. Stage managers reviewed schedules one final time. Everything appeared calm on the surface. Behind the curtains, however, every second carried enormous responsibility. Thousands of hours of preparation had led to this evening. One mistake could become unforgettable. But so could perfection. Backstage, members of the production team exchanged reassuring smiles. "This crowd feels different," one crew member whispered. Another nodded. "They've been singing for almost an hour already." Indeed, even before the performance officially began, waves of fan chants rolled through the venue like ocean tides. The energy never disappeared. It only grew stronger. Outside, the sky slowly transformed into deep shades of orange and violet. One fan quietly wiped tears from her eyes. Her friend noticed immediately. "You okay?" She laughed awkwardly. "I don't know why I'm crying." "You've waited too long." "Maybe." "No," her friend corrected gently. "Definitely." The woman looked toward the massive stage. "I lost my job 2 years ago." Her friend listened silently. "I thought I'd have to sell this ticket." "But you didn't." "No." "What changed?" She smiled. "I remembered something SUGA once said." "What was it?" You don't have to move fast. Just don't stop moving. For months afterward, she had taken temporary jobs, studied new skills, rebuilt her confidence, and eventually found work again. Tonight represented much more than entertainment. It represented survival. Nearby, another group exchanged friendship bracelets they had spent weeks making. One bracelet simply read, "Keep going." Another read, "See you there." Small gifts. Simple words. Yet each carried a story invisible to everyone except the person receiving it. As darkness finally settled over Madrid, anticipation reached almost unbearable levels. Every seat was filled. Every aisle shimmered with glowing purple lights. Every heartbeat seemed synchronized. Then, the venue lights suddenly went out. Complete darkness. For less than 3 seconds, absolute silence filled the arena. Then the first note echoed. The roar that followed seemed powerful enough to shake the entire city. Thousands screamed simultaneously. Purple lights exploded across the audience like stars appearing in a night sky. Smoke drifted across the stage. A single spotlight slowly illuminated the center platform. At first, nothing. Only silence. Only light. Only expectation. Then a familiar silhouette appeared. The audience erupted. People cried. Some laughed uncontrollably. Others covered their mouths in disbelief. Many simply stood frozen, overwhelmed by the realization that the moment they had imagined for years was finally real. Without saying a single word, SUGA stood beneath the spotlight, quietly observing the sea of light stretching endlessly before him. Perhaps even disbelief. No matter how many stages an artist performs on, there are still nights that feel extraordinary. This was clearly one of them. He slowly raised the microphone. The audience instantly became silent. Madrid. Another deafening roar interrupted him before he could continue. He laughed. The simple sound of his laughter somehow made thousands of people even louder. When the cheers finally softened, he spoke again. "I've waited a long time to meet you." The arena answered with thunderous applause. Then the music began. Powerful bass echoed through every corner of the venue. The first performance unfolded with breathtaking precision. Every movement felt deliberate. Every lyric carried emotional weight. Every visual transformed the massive stage into a living piece of art. Fans sang every word with astonishing passion. Rather than merely watching a performance, they became part of it. The distance between artist and audience seemed to disappear completely. It felt less like one person standing on stage and more like tens of thousands sharing the same heartbeat. As song after song filled the night air, one truth became increasingly impossible to ignore. This wasn't simply another stop on a tour. Something extraordinary was happening in Madrid. And before the night was over, it would become the concert everyone would be talking about. The opening performance ended beneath a cascade of shimmering lights, yet the applause refused to fade. It rolled through the arena like distant thunder, growing louder each time SUGA stepped closer to the edge of the stage. For a brief moment, he lowered the microphone and simply looked across the ocean of glowing purple lights. The scene was breathtaking. Thousands of light sticks moved together like gentle waves beneath a midnight sky. Faces from every corner of the world reflected the same mixture of excitement, gratitude, and disbelief. Some fans were smiling through tears, while others held handmade banners so tightly that their hands trembled. Backstage, the production crew exchanged relieved smiles. Weeks of rehearsals, technical checks, and late-night planning had paid off. Every lighting cue had landed perfectly. Every camera movement flowed naturally with the music. Yet everyone knew the evening was still unfolding, and the most emotional moments had yet to arrive. As the music softened, SUGA took a slow breath. "When I first dreamed about performing," he said with a warm smile, "I never imagined that my music would bring together people from so many different countries." The audience erupted once again. "It doesn't matter where you're from tonight," he continued. For these few hours, we're sharing the same memories. The words were simple, but they carried remarkable weight. Fans looked at one another, many realizing they had formed friendships with strangers while waiting outside the venue. Language barriers had disappeared long before the concert began. The next song arrived with a completely different atmosphere. Instead of explosive energy, soft piano notes filled the arena. The giant screens displayed gentle colors that resembled the first light of dawn. The crowd instinctively quieted, allowing every lyric to resonate. In the front rows, a young woman quietly wiped away tears. Her friend leaned closer. "Are you okay?" She nodded slowly. "This song helped me through one of the hardest years of my life." Her voice nearly disappeared beneath the music. "I promised myself that if I ever heard it live, I'd remember how far I've come." Her friend squeezed her hand without saying another word. Sometimes silence expressed more than language ever could. As the final note faded, thousands of tiny lights remained raised in the air. The arena became astonishingly quiet before another wave of applause filled every corner of the venue. The energy shifted again as the stage transformed with dazzling visuals and powerful rhythms. The audience jumped in unison, singing every chorus with incredible passion. It no longer felt like a performance happening in front of the crowd, it felt as though the crowd itself had become part of the show. Hours seemed to pass in minutes.